Picture the room at your last executive steering committee meeting.
Oh, yeah. We all know that room.
Right. So the agenda shifts to enterprise AI adoption, and I swear the ambient temperature in the room just instantly changes.
That's 10 degrees.
Exactly. And look, if you look around that table, and if you're a VP, a CFO, or, sitting in the CEO's chair, you know exactly what this looks like. You're basically watching this silent psychological fracture.
Yeah, it's intense.
Half of your leadership team is quietly terrified that the organization is moving way too slowly, right? Like they're losing ground to competitors. And then the other half is terrified you're moving much too fast. Like you're just barreling towards some catastrophic data breach or, a massive compliance failure.
Yeah, and you are literally watching the single most destabilizing dynamic in corporate governance today.
Right.
I mean, we tend to treat AI adoption as this technological hurdle, right?
It's just an IT problem.
Well, exactly. Like it's just about selecting the right vendor or, securing the right cloud architecture. But the technology is actually secondary here. What's paralyzing organizations right now is this profound, totally unmanaged psychological tug of war happening right at the executive level.
And that is exactly what we're focusing on today in this deep dive. We're going to unpack that specific boardroom tension. We are pulling from the Amplified Impact newsletter and some really fascinating research by Scott Wise. He's the founder of AI for Leaders.
Yeah, his work on this is just brilliant.
It really is. He basically argues that this invisible force, this polarity of anxiety is quietly tearing leadership teams apart and ultimately destroying enterprise value. And he frames this through what he calls the spectrum of AI anxiety.
Right. And what I love about Wise's framework is that it just strips away all the Silicon Valley hype, all the technical jargon, and brings the focus entirely back to organizational behavior and, the P&L.
The stuff that actually matters to the board.
Exactly. He isolates these two opposing forces that dictate exactly how leadership teams react to generative AI. So on one end of the spectrum, you have FOMO, the fear of missing out, and on the other end, you have FOGO, the fear of grievous outcomes.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because defining these two forces is critical to understanding why your AI initiatives are stalling out. So FOMO is that competitive panic. It's the voice of, say, the chief marketing officer or the head of product who's looking at the market trends, reading competitor press releases, and basically pounding the table, insisting the company deploy AI right now.
Yeah, because they need to signal innovation to the market.
Yeah.
And look, it is driven by a very real existential threat. The fear there is total obsolescence.
Right.
The FOMO camp looks at the sheer acceleration of these generative models, and they calculate, quite rationally by the way, that if they don't integrate these systems into their internal workflows right now, the capability gap between them and their competitors is going to become completely unbridgeable in 18 months.
It's a terrifying thought. But then you look across the table at the FOGO camp, the fear of grievous outcomes.
Yeah. The brakes.
The brakes. This is your chief risk officer, your general counsel, the chief information security officer. They are looking at the exact same generative AI models, but they see the hallucinations, the lack of data provenance, the shifting regulatory framework, especially between the EU and the US, and they just see this massive risk of IP leakage. Their entire mandate is to pull the emergency brake.
Right. It's like trying to drive a high-performance sports car where one executive is literally stomping on the gas pedal and the other is just yanking the emergency brake as hard as they can.
That's a perfect analogy. And I think the standard narrative in business is to just view this as a personality conflict, right? Like a CEO might look at the general counsel and think, well, they're just being an obstructionist. They just hate change.
Yeah, or they look at the innovation lead and assume, oh, they're just chasing the next shiny object without any real rigorous business case.
Exactly. But treating this as a personal flaw, like some sort of individual weakness, that is where the enterprise makes its first major mistake.
It really is. And that's the crucial insight from Wise's research here. This is not a personal failing at all. It is a structural team dynamic.
Right.
Both of those executives, the one demanding speed and the one demanding caution, are acting highly rationally. They're just operating on completely different intelligence streams regarding enterprise risk.
Because their jobs are fundamentally different.
Exactly. The executive pushing for speed is tasked with preserving market share. The executive demanding caution is tasked with preserving the structural integrity of the entire company.
Okay, but I want to push back on this a little bit. I mean, you've got sales and marketing wanting to move fast, and legal and compliance wanting to mitigate risk. We've seen that dynamic in literally every technology cycle, right? From adopting cloud computing to mobile enterprise. So why is AI accelerating this tension to the point where it's literally breaking leadership teams?
That is the big question. And it's because of the fundamental nature of the technology itself. We're transitioning from deterministic software to probabilistic systems.
Okay, break that down for us.
So for the last 40 years, enterprise software has been deterministic. You write a rule, the software follows the rule. If a user clicks X, the database returns Y. It's totally predictable.
Right, it does what you tell it to do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But generative AI is probabilistic. It doesn't look up an answer at a database. It statistically predicts the next most likely sequence of information based on these massive neural networks.
Meaning you could input the exact same prompt twice and get two entirely different outputs.
Which is completely terrifying for a compliance officer.
Oh, I bet.
When you deploy a probabilistic system on top of legacy data architectures, you are introducing a level of unpredictability that prior technology cycles just never had. Cloud computing was just, moving your servers to someone else's building. The software still behaved the same way. But AI actually reasons, and it hallucinates.
So the FOGO response isn't just standard bureaucratic friction.
No, not at all. It is a highly rational response to an unprecedented shift in how our systems actually generate output.
Okay, but that sets up a huge paradox for you, the executive, listening to this. If both the FOMO perspective and the FOGO perspective are entirely rational, and both are acting in the fiduciary interest of the company, why is enterprise AI adoption failing so spectacularly right now? I mean, if everyone's being rational, we should be seeing measured, successful deployments, right?
Right. And this is where we have to bring in Scott Wise's core reframe. If we connect this to the bigger picture, we're missing the calibration mechanism. The reframe is this. Anxiety itself is not the pathology.
Okay.
The pathology is uncalibrated anxiety.
Oh, wow. Uncalibrated anxiety. Let's break down what calibration actually looks like in a corporate environment.
Sure. So calibrated FOMO is fantastic. It's the engine of modernization. You absolutely need that urgency to break through institutional inertia. Without it, you just get bogged down in endless committee reviews while your competitors steal your market share.
Right. And on the flip side,
Calibrated FOGO is your steering and braking system. It provides the proactive governance, the red teaming, the data sanitization protocols you need to actually scale a model without, accidentally exposing all your proprietary IP to the public internet.
so the breakdown happens when these forces start acting in isolation.
Exactly.
When FOGO operates without calibration, it stops being governance and just evolves into pure avoidance. You get complete bureaucratic gridlock. And when FOMO operates without calibration, it stops being a strategy and becomes a panic response. That's when you get those reckless Big Bang deployments that just blow up on the launch pad.
Yeah. And to validate the caution of the FOGO camp for a second, Wise actually cites Dario Amodei, the CEO of Anthropic.
Yeah.
They build the Claude models, which are some of the most advanced frontier-level AI systems in the world right now.
Right, they are at the bleeding edge.
And Amodei has publicly warned that humanity is rapidly unlocking this almost unimaginable technological power. He actually questions whether our current systems and institutions possess the maturity to wield it safely.
I mean, when the guy building the rocket says we might want to double-check the safety manual, the executive in your boardroom asking for a security review isn't being a Luddite. They are reading the technical reality accurately.
Yes. But the macroeconomic pressure to ignore that caution is just overwhelming right now. Leaders are operating in an environment where the market is literally screaming at them to accelerate.
Yeah, and the data on that pressure is staggering. According to the ResearchWise sites, 92% of institutional investors are actively mandating that their portfolio companies increase tech transformation and AI integration. 92%.
It is wild.
That is boardroom-level pressure cooking the FOMO. That's an operational mandate tied directly to executive compensation and stock performance.
Which creates a massive systemic wave of uncalibrated FOMO. You have CEOs feeling compelled to announce these major generative AI initiatives on their quarterly earnings calls just to appease that 92% investor mandate.
But the reality of execution paints a very different picture, doesn't it?
A completely different picture. Research from MIT's NANDA initiative shows that 95% of generative AI pilot programs fail to produce any measurable P&L impact.
I want to pause on that number because it's insane. A 95% failure rate for pilot programs to impact the P&L. If this were literally any other capital expenditure like, I don't know, a new supply chain system or a CRM migration, a 95% failure rate would result in immediate executive turnover.
Oh, heads would roll. Absolutely.
So why is the failure rate so astronomical? Is the tech just not ready yet?
Well, no, the models themselves are actually incredibly capable. The failure lies in that ready, shoot, aim pathology of uncalibrated FOMO. Enterprises are rushing to deploy advanced reasoning engines on top of unstructured, totally fragmented data foundations. You cannot build a predictive AI workflow when your internal data is scattered across like siloed SharePoint drives, outdated ERP systems, and undocumented legacy code.
Right, because the AI can only optimize the data it actually has access to.
Exactly. If the data architecture is a swamp, the AI simply processes the swamp faster.
And we see the consequences of this rushing in the case studies Wise highlights. I mean, they are brutal examples of what happens when the FOMO engine outruns the FOGO brakes. Look at Volkswagen's Cariad division.
Oh, yeah. That's a classic example.
They attempted this massive sweeping rollout to build a unified AI-driven operating system for 12 of their automotive brands simultaneously.
Right. They attempted to completely bypass iterative, bounded testing in favor of this monolithic launch. And it was driven entirely by the fear of losing the software-defined vehicle market to competitors like Tesla.
But building a unified architecture across 12 distinct corporate entities means you're dealing with 12 different sets of legacy hardware, telemetry data, internal engineering cultures. By skipping the localized governance and trying to solve everything at once, they generated a 20 million line, incredibly buggy code base.
Wow. 20 million lines.
Yeah, and it was so unstable that it delayed major flagship vehicle launches, including the electric Porsche Macan, by over a year. That is a multi-billion-dollar cost to the enterprise simply because they lacked calibrated governance.
And you see a really similar mechanical failure in the McDonald's drive-thru pilot. So McDonald's partnered with IDM to push automated voice AI into, I think, 500 drive-thru lanes.
Which, from a FOMO perspective, the business case is super obvious, right? Automate order taking, reduce headcount, increase throughput.
Exactly. But the acoustic environment of a drive-thru is incredibly hostile to natural language processing. Think about it. You have engine noise, overlapping voices from kids in the back seat, rain, different accents, and people just changing their minds mid-sentence like, I want a burger. Wait, no, make it chicken.
Right. And deterministic software can handle clear, structured inputs. But when a probabilistic model faces low-confidence audio inputs like that, it starts making statistical guesses.
And because they rushed the deployment without sufficient edge case testing in real-world environments, the AI started hallucinating. It misheard prompts and started ordering completely bizarre combinations. People were getting charged hundreds of dollars for chicken nuggets, or they'd get ice cream topped with ketchup and butter.
Ketchup and butter.
Yeah. It was such a disaster they had to dismantle the entire pilot.
But I think the financial sector provides the most catastrophic example of uncalibrated FOMO, and it highlights this critical technical concept called model drift. So Zillow decided to use AI valuation models to dynamically predict the housing market and flip homes at scale.
Right, their iBuying program.
Yeah, they essentially bet their balance sheet that their machine learning models could outpredict human judgment.
And the problem there is that machine learning models learn their statistical weights based on historical data. So Zillow trained its algorithms on years of relatively stable pre-pandemic real estate transactions. But when the pandemic hit, the macroeconomic environment experienced unprecedented volatility.
The statistical distribution of the market shifted entirely.
Exactly. This is concept drift. The data the model was trained on no longer represented reality.
But because Zillow lacked the FOGO voice-like, they lacked robust human-in-the-loop overrides or circuit breakers to detect when the model was operating outside of its confidence intervals. The system just kept buying houses at inflated prices with total confidence.
With no one pulling the brake.
Right. And the result? A $569 million loss in a single quarter. They were forced to liquidate 7,000 homes and completely shut down the entire iBuying division. $500 million vaporized because they trusted a probabilistic model in a volatile environment without governance.
And what's vital for a senior leader to absorb from Volkswagen, McDonald's, and Zillow is that the AI technically did exactly what it was engineered to do. It optimized based on its training parameters and the data it was fed.
It wasn't the tech's fault.
No. These were not technology failures. They were governance failures. They were leadership teams allowing uncalibrated FOMO to dictate deployment without the necessary architectural and operational safeguards.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though. If I am a CEO listening to this, and I just heard about a 95% pilot failure rate, hallucinating drive-throughs, and $500 million write-downs, my immediate rational response is to lock everything down.
Just pull the emergency brake.
Exactly. Pull the FOGO emergency brake, ban ChatGPT on company networks, block access to all third-party APIs, and just wait a year or two for the vendor landscape to mature. Why is that a bad idea?
Because that is the ultimate trap of uncalibrated FOGO. Attempting to just wait it out is fatal in this technology cycle. Look at it this way. FOMO creates loud, spectacular explosions that make the front page of the Wall Street Journal.
Right.
FOGO creates a silent, compounding rot inside your operations that you don't even notice until it's way too late. When leaders try to ban these tools, they fall victim to what Gartner identifies as the enablement illusion.
The illusion that a corporate policy actually dictates employee behavior.
Exactly. It's the exact opposite of what leaders assume is happening. Executives issue a memo banning generative AI, and they confidently tell the board the risk has been neutralized. But the workforce does not stop using AI.
No, of course not. The capability enhancement is too massive to ignore. I mean, if an analyst can reduce a 6-hour data formatting task to 30 seconds using a public language model, they're going to do it. They just stop telling their managers about it.
Exactly. The research shows that when tools are banned or strictly restricted without providing secure internal alternatives, 45% of employees admit to using unapproved AI tools anyway.
Almost half the workforce goes rogue, and we need to be really clear about the mechanics of how dangerous that actually is. This isn't just an employee using a banned calculator app. Shadow AI involves employees taking proprietary corporate data and feeding it into public commercial models to get their work done.
And Netscope data actually reveals the scale of this leakage. They track cloud security, and they found that the average enterprise is seeing 8.2 gigabytes of data flowing into public, unmanaged AI models every single month.
8.2 gigabytes of text. That is an astronomical amount of data.
It's massive.
That is not a stray email. That is entire proprietary code bases, confidential financial forecasts, legal contracts, and strategic roadmaps being copy-pasted into public servers.
And once that data is processed by a public model, it can be incorporated into that model's training weights, meaning your intellectual property is now helping to train the system that your competitors have access to.
Wow.
So uncalibrated FOGO does not eliminate risk at all. It simply drives the risk entirely underground, where your chief information security officer has zero visibility, zero audit logs, and absolutely zero ability to intervene. By trying to achieve perfect safety, you essentially engineer the ultimate unmonitorable security breach.
And beyond the data leakage, there is a massive human capital cost to this paralysis, too. High-tier knowledge workers, your top developers, your elite analysts, your best strategists, they increasingly view access to advanced AI not as a perk, but as baseline infrastructure required to do their jobs effectively.
Right, the capability gap becomes a talent retention crisis. The data indicates that 71% of IT professionals state they are more likely to stay at a company that provides robust automation and AI tools.
So if you are the executive playing the waiting game, demanding absolute certainty before deployment, your elite talent is not going to wait with you. They recognize that their own market value depends on mastering these tools.
Exactly. If they can't build those skills at your company, they will quietly update their resumes and leave for competitors who are actively investing in their capabilities.
And the cost of that delay just keeps compounding.
Yeah.
Your competitors are building institutional muscle memory. They're learning how to clean their data architectures, how to prompt effectively, how to govern probabilistic systems. If you wait 2 years to start that learning process, you don't just start 2 years behind. You start behind a competitor who has achieved exponential efficiency gains.
Yeah, you can't catch up.
So this brings us to the operational reality. We know uncalibrated FOMO burns capital and destroys products. We know uncalibrated FOGO bleeds top talent and creates massive shadow IT risks. What does a senior leader listening to this actually do differently on Monday morning? How do you repair a fractured boardroom dynamic?
Well, Scott Wise's advice here is highly tactical. The next step for a leader is not to order another external vendor assessment.
Right, no more benchmarking reports.
Exactly. Your next step is psychological and strategic. In your very next AI conversation, whether that's a budget allocation meeting, a review of a pilot program, or a strategy update with the board, your primary objective is to actively observe the voices in the room.
You have to map the spectrum of anxiety in real time. Listen closely to the executives. Identify the voice anchored in what could go wrong, the concerns about data provenance, model hallucinations, and compliance risk. That is your FOGO.
Right.
Then identify the voice anchored in what is being left behind, the pressure from the investor mandate, the competitor who just shipped an AI feature. That is your FOMO.
And once you map those voices, your job as a leader is to formally introduce them to each other. You must actually name the spectrum out loud in the room.
Name it to tame it.
Exactly. By giving the leadership team a shared, objective language, you depersonalize the conflict. You take this toxic, unnamed debate that usually results in either reckless action or total gridlock, and you forge an integrated strategy.
You change the framing from a battle of wills to an architectural necessity. You validate both sides. You tell the general counsel, your concerns about data sanitization are valid, calibrated FOGO. We need that to design our permissioning guardrails so the model only accesses data the user has clearance for.
Yes.
And then you turn to the chief marketing officer and say, your push for competitive speed is valid, calibrated FOMO. We need that urgency to define the use cases that actually impact the bottom line.
You fuse the brakes in the engine. The organization that are navigating this transition successfully, the true pacesetters in the enterprise space, they do not attempt to eliminate anxiety, they harness it.
They use the FOGO perspective to enforce rigorous data architecture hygiene, making sure unstructured data is classified and secured. And they use the FOMO perspective to rapidly execute small, highly bounded pilots.
Exactly. They target back-office efficiencies or internal workflows where the cost of a hallucination is low, but the ROI on time saved is really measurable. They build capability without betting the balance sheet.
It is a complete shift from conflict to calibration, and that requires real executive leadership, not just IT implementation. Look, for leaders who want to dive deeper into these frameworks and start building this specific capability within their own executive teams, the full breadth of Scott Wise's content, research, and advisory tools are available at scottwise.ai.
Yeah, I highly recommend it. The frameworks provided there are engineered specifically for this level of strategic integration. They really help organizations transition boardroom anxiety from a paralyzing force into a structured architectural advantage.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the source material, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought. In his research, Wise identifies the 5 archetypes of AI leadership anxiety.
This is a great framework.
It really is, because before you can manage your team, you have to audit yourself. So when you look in the mirror tomorrow morning, which archetype is secretly driving your decisions? Are you the ostrich, burying your head in legacy revenue streams, trying to convince yourself that your specific industry is immune to this disruption?
Or are you the spectator, continuously reading white papers, attending webinars, researching use cases, but never actually committing capital or changing operations?
Right. Or consider if you are the performer. The performer confuses the purchase of software licenses with actual organizational transformation. They deploy Microsoft Copilot to 10,000 employees, report the vanity metrics to the board, and totally ignore the fact that the underlying workflows haven't changed at all.
Or perhaps you're the gatekeeper, leveraging compliance as an excuse to lock down every system, just blissfully oblivious to the gigabytes of shadow AI data leaking out of your network every single day.
Or are you the builder? The builder is the leader who acknowledges their own anxiety and uses it as diagnostic data. They use the fear to create actual data readiness and the urgency to deploy meaningful pilots. You cannot steer your organization through the most significant technological shift of our generation until you locate exactly where you are standing on that spectrum.
Because the anxiety itself is not the problem. Leaving it unnamed and uncalibrated is what destroys companies.
Thank you for joining us on the deep dive. Take a hard look at your own dashboard this week. Figure out if your hands are gripped on the gas pedal or white-knuckling the emergency brake. Keep asking the hard questions, and we will see you next time.